For today's PE session on effective social media, we have Team 1261, the Peachtree Ridge Road Alliance, and Mackenzie Glazier presenting. So go ahead and hand it over to them.
Thanks. Hey, so like Ryan said, we're from Team 1261, and my name is Mackenzie. I'm the president of Peachtree Ridge Robotics this year. Presenting with me is Noir Khan, our VP of Business, and Caroline Means, our VP of Outreach. So today we're going to be talking about social media. So let's start off with the basics. Why is social media important? Why should you bother with the extra effort? It's important for your communication. Inside your teams, you talk to each other a lot. You probably have your own ways to communicate, but outside your team, it's a little more difficult. Social media gives you a way to communicate with other teams, with businesses, and with local community members, parents, things like that. Even alumni can be updated through your social media. So it's a good way to get yourself out there into the community without having to put in too much extra effort. And it also helps you establish your image as a team, basically who you are, how other teams perceive you. You want to kind of have an idea in your head of who you want others to think you are in terms of a team, whether you're really goofy all the time, whether you're more serious and professional, things like that. And your social media can help you to establish that image.
All right, so a question that a lot of teams have to think about is how extensive should your social media be? For our team, we kind of shoot for the big three, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So that's generally what judges are going to want to see if they're asking about social media. We found it's the most applicable to our audience that we're trying to meet. But each team is different, so you want to make sure that you're tailoring it to the needs of your team. For example, we had some members make a Vine for our team, and then we stopped and reevaluated, and we're like, wait, but do we really have the resources right now to maintain a Vine if we're having issues keeping up with the social media that we have right now? So you want to make sure that your social media is all quality and you're doing each channel thoroughly rather than having a lot of channels which you don't maintain. Because like Mackenzie said, it is a part of your team image, and if your social media isn't maintained, it kind of gives off the idea that your team is not well maintained organizationally. So you want to make sure that that mirrors the level of effort that you're willing to put in. So on that note, effective managing is a lot about making sure you know the purpose of each channel. You're going to want to keep in mind your audience for all of these things because, as we'll get to later, your audience is slightly different for each channel. So, for example, Instagram is generally a younger audience of students, Facebook is a lot more adults, and Twitter is kind of a mix of the two. If you get to a point where you realize that your social media is unused and it's not something that's being updated often, then you want to go ahead and delete that. If there's social media that your team made like 3 years ago and everyone graduated who was maintaining that, and now there's nothing on there, that's something you're probably going to want to delete, because when teams are going through and they're finding teams to follow, if they come across that, they can tend to get a little confused, like, is there another account that I should find, or is this it, or I don't know, man. So delete what's unused, and once you have your social media going, you're going to want to make sure you're keeping track of who's commenting on what. This goes back to image again. If you have team members on your social media commenting kind of silly things or things that could potentially be interpreted as inappropriate, you need to make sure that you get on there and you delete that quickly. So keep that in mind. Make sure you're paying attention to what's being posted on your social media and how other people are interacting with it, just like all of your personal social media. The final point on that is you want to make sure that you have smart naming. For us, Team 1261, to the general public, that doesn't mean very much. So you want to make sure that you choose a name that means something to people who aren't necessarily heavily involved in FRC, because social media is a really good way to connect with people who aren't heavily involved in FRC. So instead of Team 1261, all of our social media is Peachtree Ridge Robotics. It gives the name of our school, so if people are looking at Peachtree Ridge stuff, they can find us, and then they know what part of Peachtree Ridge we are. So keep that in mind when you're making your social media accounts, and it'll make things easy to manage, easy to find, and you'll get in contact with your audience.
Okay, so yes, we were like pulling pictures of like the perfect examples, so we thought of toast. So there is a specific time of day that you want to post. A lot of teams usually keep it constant, and that's usually better. I know that the ideal time frame is like between about 5 till 8, because after that people are going to bed, so they're kind of just like waiting around. And if you post, you want to keep it constant. So you don't want to post like randomly throughout the day. You want to make sure that you post at least once every however often you believe you should, depending on the type of social media that you're using. So say you're at competition, that might be a little bit different type of posting than you would be if you were at like just a regular build meeting, you know. So you just need to make sure you monitor the occasions. You also don't want to post like 50 times at competition, because then it gets kind of annoying because people will scroll through and just not even look at what you're posting. You also don't want to post once throughout like your entire season. And then some teams like to do Meet the Team Mondays or Friend Team Friday, or wait, rewind. Okay, some teams like to do reoccurring events. Like I know our team likes to do Meet the Team Monday, where every Monday we kind of have like a goofy picture of someone on their team, and we talk about who they are and what they've contributed for us, and it kind of makes them feel a little bit better, kind of want to participate with the team. I know we are also talking about doing stuff like Friend Team Friday, where we talk about some of the teams we've worked with in Georgia First and how like they've influenced how we grew as a team. So you also want to keep that type of interaction in mind when you're posting. Oh yeah, and here are just some pictures like of our Meet the Team Monday. That's Tanishq. He's like this bite-sized freshman on our team, or no, now he's a sophomore on our team. And then Fernbank, who posted after competition, like this was what we thought was a really good post of here's the teams we worked with, and thank you so much for supporting us, that kind of thing. Okay, so I kind of work a lot with the Twitter on our team simply because it's one of the social medias that I use in my personal life, so I knew the format a little bit better. But do note that personal social media and team social media are different. For Twitter, your audience is going to be a little bit different than Facebook and Instagram, in the sense that it's going to be more sponsors, other teams, and the general public. So you can also get businesses involved in your Twitter account, whereas like on your Instagram, you're not going to be having like IBM Watson follow you. Whereas on Twitter, they might, if you follow them and like keep interactions with them. And Twitter is also a little bit younger than Facebook users, in the sense that a lot of people our age really don't use Facebook anymore, or like they have it and they just scroll through feeds. But Twitter is something that's like constant and it's fast paced, like our generation in general, so they look at that a lot more often than they would Facebook. So generally with your Twitter, you're gonna wanna post like 2 to 3 times a day. That might be a little bit much depending on how you use your Twitter, but in general, that's like a pretty good amount. If you go to competition, it's a little bit different, like I said, with different event postings and occasions. And then I know some teams like to do like 1 tweet every day, or 1 tweet every like 2 or 3 days, so that people know they're still using their Twitter and people can be updated, but it's not just like a mindless tweet of like, oh, have a great day, guys, every like day. Twitter can also be used to interact with other teams, in the sense that like you can tweet at people, people can tag you in their tweets, you can comment and then share tweets, you can retweet other teams' tweets. So it's a bit more interactive than the other platforms of social media, whereas like Facebook is kind of just like and share, and then if you tag, it's kind of like, oh, they tagged me. Because on Twitter, it's more you're tweeting at me, so you're having a conversation with me, or you're trying to talk to me about something. So with our Twitter, we know a lot of people are interested about pinning tweets. So like 2 or 3 updates ago, Twitter created a platform where you can put a tweet at the top of your feed that people just look at when they see your page. So typically you want that to be a tweet that applies to your team. Like say you have a team picture that you wanted everyone to see, rather than having the header, because I know on like your cell phone, you might not see the header as well as you would on like a computer. So it's just like, oh, here's my team picture. Or say you wanted to talk about your sponsors and say thank you, because I know that we love our sponsors a lot and we assume that you do too. So just like give them thanks so that when people go on your page, they know who your sponsors are. And that also works well if you're working on business. I know because I'm VP of business. And then we kind of think of Twitter as Instagram and Facebook combined, in the sense that it has platforms that apply to both social medias, but it's very different because it's its own separate entity rather than having all of it combined in one jumbled mess. So it's very clean compared to the other two, which have like a lot of thought process, and like you have to think about what you post. On Twitter, it's kind of just like talk about what's going on in the moment, but you also need to make sure that it's not just a mindless tweet, like I said. So like personally, I like our Twitter the best, so I would definitely follow us and follow some of the other teams in Georgia to like look at what they're doing. If you don't have a Twitter, I recommend getting one because it helps a lot with the community in general. Okay, yeah. So here's a hashtag that I think 2415 was using last year. Hashtag RoboFam and hashtag OMG Robots. It's kind of like a PCH district thing of like, OMG Robots, hashtag RoboFam, where we're kind of trying to talk about how like all of us want to do collaborative work and cooperation and all of that combined work together in the district system and everything. So I kind of saw this tweet and I was like, okay, well like that's a perfect example of kind of just like a very short tweet that's like to the point, but it also has a picture and it talks about Georgia first. So this is kind of what you would like to have on your Twitter page and feed.
All right, so now we're going to go into the specifics of how your post should be on Facebook. So Facebook is probably the most complex form of social media you'll be using. There are a lot of different things to factor in, and there's a lot going on with how Facebook works. So typically your audience is going to be some sponsors, and then a lot of parents and alumni, and some students from other teams. Facebook is also the tool that we use the most for reaching out to the community in general. So parents who we met with their kids at a STEM night, we might ask them to follow us on Facebook and stay updated for more events that their kids could come see us at. Things like that. You can also use Facebook, we typically do a lot, for tagging other teams that you're working with, that you think did something cool, that you played against and were really impressed with their robot, things like that. You want to do less frequent posts on Facebook, and we'll talk a little bit about why in a minute, but your post should also be bigger. You don't have the character limit like you do on Twitter, so you want to give a lot of information, especially because people won't see 5 Facebook posts from you in a day, even a competition. They'll see a few, maybe, and so you want to make sure you're giving them a lot of information and updates about what your team is doing. It's also a good tool to share the pictures and videos that your team creates. In the past, our team shared the majority of our photos on Facebook. That's where we did a lot of our photo storage. We're trying to move away from that now, but you should share photos on Facebook that are relevant to your team so that when somebody looks at you, they can kind of just tell a little bit about who you are, what you do, instead of just the words that are there. It's also a really good platform to share videos you make. So like this example from Walton. After Worlds last year, they created a really cool video of just kind of the whole experience, how everything went for them. And so they posted this on Facebook a few days after Worlds, and well, actually more than a few days. And we're just like, hey, this is a cool thing we made, check it out, see what we're up to. It's a really good platform for things like that. You also want to use some hashtags on Facebook, but not too many. So like Noir was talking about the OMG Robots hashtag. That's something that a lot of FIRST teams use, but also a lot of VEX teams use. It's a pretty universal hashtag for robotics teams. And so we've actually interacted with teams because we typically tag our Facebook posts with that hashtag. So I think there was a VEX team from Saudi Arabia, right, that commented on one of our posts about Worlds because we used that hashtag and they saw us through that. So things like that, if there's a really relevant hashtag, definitely use it. So here are a couple examples of good uses of Facebook. So the first one is from Walton again. You want to post your big events. if you do something cool, if you host a competition, if you do some cool community outreach event, if you're in a parade, anything like that, like they went to visit a sponsor, you want to post that to Facebook and make it accessible for everyone. Post pictures, post some information. You want everyone to know what you're doing in kind of an overview sort of way. And then the other use for it, the other was our Facebook, is tagging other teams. So that was us right before Elims at Worlds. We used it to tag the other teams we were about to be playing with and kind of just reach out to them and be like, hey, connect with us this way, not just for the few minutes we'll be talking in person. So Facebook is really good as kind of a tool for your bigger information. There are a couple other things we wanted to note about Facebook that are different than the other forms of social media, but are really important to know if you want to use it effectively. So the first one is Facebook Live. This is a feature that got added relatively recently, but it can be useful, but it can also be annoying. If you have friends with someone or following a page who goes live frequently, you get an update on your phone every time they go live. So if someone goes live all the time, those updates can get really annoying. But it can be a really cool thing to use. Let's say you're about to play in finals somewhere. So what you can do is you can let your audience know, hey, at this time we're going to be going live. Watch the final match with us as we hope to win the competition. Things like that. So you can use it, but don't use it too frequently, just because you get alerts, and those alerts get really annoying when they pile up. The other thing about Facebook that's different is it's not time-based in what you see. It's based on algorithms that Facebook uses that kind of depend on how frequently you post and how many people interact with your page and your posts. So those of you who use Facebook probably know all the time you see so-and-so liked this, and then you see that whole post. So on your team, the more people who like your posts and comment on them, share them, whatever, the more you're going to be viewed as a page and in those specific posts. So if you have team members on your team who use Facebook, if you have parents of team members who use Facebook, ask them to like everything that you post. Because the more likes you get, the more your views expand. When you're an admin on a page, you can actually see how many views you've gotten on that specific post, and what you'll notice is that if you have 2 to 3 likes, it'll be like 100 views, but as soon as you start getting upwards of 10 likes, your views expand a lot, and you'll end up upwards of 500 with, a couple dozen likes. So the more you can get people you know personally to interact with us, the better it is for you as a team. You also don't want to post as frequently as you would tweet because of how their algorithm sorts things. If you post a lot, you're going to get pushed to the bottom. So like we talked about, probably once a day, once a big event, you don't want to be too frequent with it. The last thing that's weird about Facebook is when you set up your page, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, but when you set up your page, you aren't setting up an account on Facebook. With Twitter and with Instagram, you open an account and you call it your team name, and that's all there is to it. But with Facebook, you have to create a page. You should do this as a page, not as a person, because if people have to go friend your team, it doesn't look as professional. So you want to create a page and then add other Facebook users to your page as admins or as editors, which does create some complication because from there your team page becomes immediately linked with that person's Facebook until someone with higher access than them removes them. So that's something we'll talk about later, being careful with that, but it is a little different managing Facebook than the other ones.
Alright, so for Instagram, your audience is going to be a lot younger. A lot of times it's going to be kids who are already on your team. It'll be kids who go to your school or wherever your member base is. So I know for like a lot of the Homeschool Alliance teams, they'll have kids who pull from like 12 different schools. That didn't make sense, sorry. For some of the like 4-H teams, they'll have kids from like 12 different schools. So as they talk to their friends, that's something that they can share with them because a lot more kids use Instagram than they do Facebook. So that's something to kind of keep in mind there. There's also a lot of other teams who have Instagrams. Like I follow some teams from Europe or from Canada. And that's a really good way to interact with them because they comment a lot on each other's, and it's a good way to connect with teams who you may not meet at competition. So that being said, your audience is going to be a lot younger, and so it can be a lot less formal. You usually won't have too many sponsors who follow your Instagram. I think we have like 1 or 2, but they're all very small local sponsors. So you can keep it less formal and make it a little bit more playful. So with that in mind, we post a lot of short videos of like things happening at competition, pictures. You clearly must post one of these 3 for Instagram. Or boomerangs, which are a series of pictures and they'll go back and forth. So we have one on our page from Grits of our robot shooting a high goal. So the ball goes out of our robot and then it comes back and it just keeps going. And so fun, short little things like that are really great to share on Instagram because it catches the interest of your audience and makes them stop rather than just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. With that, I'm sure anyone who has an Instagram has spent like 20 minutes sitting there, oh my gosh, what should I caption this? Does this look okay? So that's still something that you have to think about when you have a team Instagram. You want to have cute, informative captions. They need to be really short. Kind of think about it as a Twitter thing of you have like a very, very small amount, but you can still use full words instead of just abbreviating you or things like that. Definitely don't have paragraphs on there because when you have paragraphs on Instagram, it shortens it and it only shows like the first few lines of it, and then you have to click like read more. And a lot of times people, when they're going through their social media, they're not gonna like stop and click, oh, read more. I wanna see this entire caption. And when there's a big long like chunk of text and it's on your phone, it's really a hassle. So try to keep it short, fun, cute. It's less formal, have fun with it. Like Noir said, we do a lot of fun recurring posts on our Instagram because that's our most playful medium. So that's where we would do our Meet the Team Mondays. And we were talking about maybe having like a Friend Team Friday where we post fun pictures with other teams. But be creative with that, make it your own, have something that your team is known for, and that will be your recurring Instagram. It's a good way to make sure that you're keeping up with your Instagram and that there's things that are being posted on there, especially when you have a schedule like that that you can stick to. So this is our Instagram, another example of our Meet the Team Monday. And then we also use it for events. That's our Swanee Day festival, and we use the location thing to say, hey, this is where we are. If you want to come find us, we'll be here today. So that's a good way to kind of, if you're at an event and it's going to be going on for a while, get that out there, have a fun picture, and enjoy using it. The big idea with Instagram is have fun. Toaster Tech also does a super job with their Instagram. They have all the toast puns, as they're known. And they always end their posts with a bread emoji. So that's something that they are that's their signature on Instagram. And they also have a team tag, Go Toast Go. So have fun with your Instagram. You can have silly hashtags like that and fun emojis. And Toaster Tech is a super example of that. So with integrating your social media and website, this is something our team has worked a lot on the past year. As we redesign our website and try and figure out how we want to do it. Your website is generally going to be a very different audience than your social media. Your website is a lot of times going to be people from the community who are going in, they're looking, maybe they're a sponsor, and they're looking to find out more about your team. They're not necessarily going to want to be looking at your social media, and if they really do, then they'll find it. A lot of teams will put little links to their social media. They'll have buttons or like, here's a link to our Facebook, click on this, or follow us on Twitter. But they usually won't have a big feed at the top because that's not necessarily what you want someone who's coming to your page for the first time to see, because that can be very confusing if you're going to a team's website and the first thing you see is like very specialized information about a TE session. People are gonna be like, I don't know what this is, and then they'll leave because they assume that it's just too complicated for them to understand, and that's really not what you want on your website. So a lot of teams, if they have their feed on their homepage, it'll be towards the bottom, because if someone is really looking for that feed, they'll just keep scrolling and looking. That's pretty easily done. It's a WordPress plugin, so whoever controls your website would probably know how to do that. For example, 2415, they have their links in their header. That's when you first go to their page, and they have their Twitter and their Facebook up there. So you click, and it takes you there without big feeds at the top of the page, but their social media is still accessible, visible for anyone looking for information. For G3, they have little buttons at the top, which is super nifty when you're looking, again, for their social media. It's right there. It's there for every page you go to because it's on the header. So if you are exploring their page and like, hey, this is a really nifty team, then you can access their social media with the click. These are some examples of teams who have their feeds on their homepage too. 2415 has their Twitter feed at the bottom of their website. If you scroll all the way down, you can see their tweets, which is awesome because they have arguably a really, really neat social media going on Twitter, especially within the Georgia teams. The bottom team is Miss Daisy, which is one of the better known teams in FRC. They have their Instagram at the bottom. But like I said, these are all at the bottom so that if you really want to see the feed, you keep scrolling and it doesn't take up all the interest once you first get to the page.
Alright, so now we're going to go a little bit into how the things you post at competition are different than the things you post in general when you just attend events, do outreach, things like that. Because while you're at competition, a lot of your audience wants to know what you're doing, how successful you're being, things like that. So on Facebook, you should probably update every 2 or so matches. This is a lot more than you're posting on a general basis, but sorry to clarify, that's every 2 or so of your matches. So after a couple matches, update people on how you're doing or something fun that happened. At the beginning of the day, you should Facebook a link to the live stream so that people who want to tune in from home can do that. Just be like, hey, we're excited to go into a day of competition. You can watch us compete here. The other big point about Facebook is that, and really all of them, but when you are done, if it's that you don't get picked to play any elims, if it's that you get knocked out of elims, if it's that your robot breaks and you can't compete, if it's that you win, no matter what happens, you have to keep posting and let people know how you did. I think we've before had competitions where we played elims and we won and we got through it all, and people sitting at home, all they saw was that we were going to be playing in elims because we got caught up in the excitement and didn't update. We've gotten knocked out before in quarterfinals and stopped updating because we were sad and nobody knew that we got knocked out in quarterfinals. Things like that are really, really common on any of the forms of social media, and so that's something to really be aware of. If you get knocked out, let everybody know how you did. Congratulate the teams who beat you, or congratulate the teams who win. Shout out teams for the awards they get. Shout out your team for the award that you win. Things like that. You don't just want to disappear when your day is done, because that doesn't make a lot of sense to your audience. You also want to thank your sponsors a lot. You can tag them in your posts. You know, let's say midday during lunch break, you might have had a rough day, but you want to still thank your sponsors for everything that they do and make sure you're still interacting with them. So write a quick post that says we want to thank our sponsors and then tag them for the opportunity to be here and compete today. You also, right before elims, right after alliance selection, you want to tag your alliances if they have social media and post about how excited you are to go play with them. Because that is another way to gain people from other teams coming in to see your social media and also to show that you really do care about your alliance and you're invested in working together well. This example here is another one from G3 that they posted at Grits. That's kind of a good midday match update. They posted their rank they posted a fun picture of some of their teammates, and they let everyone know how they were doing. It doesn't have to be super intensive, but things like that every few matches are really good. Basically, you want to start off the morning with an update, with a live stream link, give updates throughout the day, and then end the evening with how you did that day or that competition. In Instagram, it's a little different. Instagram, you don't want to clutter up people's feeds as much, and people aren't on Instagram to find specific information about your performance as much as they might be on Facebook. So 1, 2, maybe 3 times a day competition is pretty good for Instagram. You can post your match schedule. You can post an end of the day update as long as you keep it brief and fun. You can post just something cute and fun that you happen to take a picture of and use that as a way to update people on how you're doing. Things like that are really good to reach out during competition. All right, so here are some examples. The first one is from us at Worlds. And basically, we were, I think, just waiting in queue for a match, and our social media person took a picture of the robot and how it was doing, and decided to use that to thank our sponsors. So she tagged Motorola, Maxis, Hendrick Motorsports, Howard Brothers, things like that. To get our name out there and show them that, like, the money that they gave us to build this robot is actually doing something cool and actually competing. The other one is from Fernbank last weekend at Grits. They ended up winning. And so they posted with their alliance, and they tagged their alliance in it, and they let everybody know how they did, and they used the OMG Robots hashtag and the Stronghold hashtag. Another thing that I really like about this post in particular is that they talk about how they defended their title as Grits champions. So instead of just saying, hey, we won Grits, they put in there that this is the second time they've won Grits. So for a sponsor clicking on their page, I don't just see that, like, yeah, they won something cool. I see that they consistently win. They're consistently doing a good job. And that's a cool thing to see as well. Here are a couple examples of Instagram posts. So the first one over there is from us. That's Noir. And it was a picture of our match schedule and how we did in each one of those matches. So that way we got out an update about our progress, but it was also a fun picture with people involved, and it wasn't too wordy. The other one is from 4188 Columbus Space Program, and that was a post from last year at Rocket City where they qualified to go to Worlds. So they put some pictures from the competition in there, and you can choose whether or not you want to do things like collages based on what your team's overall image and Instagram looks like. And they used a few of the hashtags, and then they said, oh, you know, today was our last day and we qualified to go to Worlds. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't a ton of information, but it was right for Instagram in terms of getting their audience quick and fun information.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to competition posting for Twitter and Snapchat, which are a bit more of my realm. So Twitter, you want to post after every single one of your matches. You don't need to post after every single match. This is a little bit more frequent than Facebook, which would be every like 2 to 3 of your matches. So like emphasizing the point of like people are following you to know what your team is doing. You don't need to mention like every single thing that's going on in competition. In the sense that like if someone wanted to hear about like Grady going to semifinals, they would be following Grady, but you can congratulate them. So it's not necessarily like saying everything that's going on. So another good thing to do on Twitter is post every morning and every night, so people kind of know where you're starting at the competition. Like say you're loading in and talking about what you're doing, or say you're starting in like second place, so or like the second seed, so you can talk about that. And then at the end of the day, so people can know exactly where you are in the competition, and they can keep in mind like what they should expect in the following day or two, or like if it's like the last day, you can tell them what position you're in, or like if you have or haven't won the competition, you can thank your sponsors for helping you at the end of the day, that type of thing. So on Twitter, you also want to post pictures every now and then. Twitter isn't typically used for pictures, it's more for like short text, but you will see it relatively often, so there's no problem with like tweeting out pictures. So I know for our team, we really like posting like a big team picture at the end of the day, or like say something happened to our robot, or like if we're doing well, we send out like a picture of the scoreboard. I know some teams like to talk about like exactly where they are in the competition, like say they're talking to another team and they had fun, they'll like post about it and talk about it, or like say they had some event that happened during competition or got an award, they'll talk about that too. Sorry. So, and then, like I said before, the RoboFam hashtag is very common on Twitter, but in general, I think it's a really nice hashtag for us to use because it's supporting 2415, but it's also kind of trying to unite PCH district, which I know is one of their main goals as of now because we've moved to the district system, so there's a lot more collaboration. So you do want to work with the teams a little bit more, which is the beauty of Twitter. It allows that to happen. And then this isn't one of our platforms, because like Caroline said, we go for the big three of Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But this is a new platform that's coming out to many different teams. I know Columbus really likes using it, and it works relatively well for them. It's just not something that our team would like to do, but if it's something your team would be able to work with, then I say go for it. The audience is a little bit different though. It's not necessarily going to be sponsors in that sense, which people who use Snapchat would know that you kind of have to search for whatever you're trying to add on there, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they'll add you back and that you can talk to them on Snapchat. It kind of means that they might be able to see some of your stories that you post. So I know that like for us, if we were to have it, we'd kind of post like updates about the school, and I know Columbus, they kind of show sneak peeks of their robot, or like there was one really cool post about their like kind of robot archives where they have pieces of old robots and all of that type of stuff. So it's kind of neat, fun posts, but it's not necessarily for everyone to see, and it's for people that really want to see, so you can post however often. I'm just saying, like, don't post like 50 million Snapchat stories because it gets tedious to kind of go through and look at all of them, and especially because people who go on Snapchat kind of just want to see a general update of what's happening. It's not necessarily a, okay, what exactly is your team doing, and that type of thing. I couldn't really pull up an example because Snapchat is only for like that short period of time, and when you screenshot, people can tell, so FYI for future reference. You also want to make sure that in your 24-hour period, you don't have too many posts, because if you think like, oh, I'll post this many today and then this many tomorrow, it might not necessarily mean like you had 3 today and 3 tomorrow. It could mean that you have 6 in your 24-hour period, making it for some people to have to post, like go through all of your posts. So that's just something to be aware of when you're Snapchatting. And it's not necessarily, like people aren't adding you on Snapchat just to like view what you're doing, you know, they're adding you and they're adding their friends. So you need to make sure that your Snapchat is a little bit distinct, but it's also not just like cluttering the page in a different way. Like you want to make sure it appeals to the format that you're using. So, and then, yeah. So just the example I pulled up, it was from Team Auto, and I like that they posted relatively often, and a lot of their posts were talking about competition, and like they're very short and to the point, but they're also talking about what's going on at competition. And I thought that this was a relatively good example of what you want to do, because it's not overwhelming people, but it's also not just like, we're going to competition, guys. So. Okay. So we kind of talked about this throughout the presentation, but just to specify, each type of social media has a different audience that you would like to reach out to. For one of our main goals for different social media purposes are, or like our 3 main goals are sponsors, outreach, and other teams. Sponsors, because you can, depending on the social media platform, of course, you can follow them, you can tag them, you can thank them for all of their support towards your team. You can share what you're doing with like other groups and other sponsors, you know. Say like, for us, one of our big sponsors is Howard Brothers, and they follow us on Instagram and we talk to them. So they kind of look at updates of what we do, and we reach out to them through our social media. And it kind of shows the community what they're doing, so it makes our sponsors happy. And it also shows that we like work with our community well, so it's good for different competition purposes and outreach awards, etc. We also have the outreach purpose going on off of that point, where Twitter, like we said, is more for students and sponsors. You're going to be following businesses, some students from your school, your community will be following you. You'll be talking to different members in your general vicinity. And then Instagram, which is more for students in the community as well, not necessarily businesses following you, but people in your local, like your Robo fam, actually. Facebook is community in general, you know, like anyone can follow you. I know we had a team from Israel like our page and talk to us on Facebook before. So like it's open to everyone and anyone that would like to see your page. And then Snapchat, which is pretty much just students trying to see what you're doing. Typically other first students trying to get sneak peeks of like what you're doing and or like looking at your cool robot archives, like what I do in my free time. And then other teams, you know, like I said, with the new district system, you kind of want to reach out, and it's really easy to reach out with social media because it's right on your computer, it's right away. We do a lot of pre-scouting where we kind of talk to teams before competition to get a feel for like who they are and what they want to do at competition. And it's really easy with teams that have like a really nice social media platform because we know, okay, like 5828 we can tweet at and talk to them, or like 2415 we can message them on Facebook and like talk to them about something just in case we didn't have that personal contact there. And it works really well with all of our recent attempts at talking. So here's an example. I saw Otto's page and I just like clicked right away and it was the perfect example, so go Otto. They have a few sponsors that they're following. They have a community and they have a team that's like in the middle of a different area. So you know, you can see how Twitter kind of links people in different vicinities and that type of thing. So it's very different from the other platforms. Yeah, it's really nice.
All right, so this slide is about a point that we really want to emphasize as you expand your team's social media and as you manage it. You will likely have a student who is, or students who are responsible for managing your social media. And the point you need to emphasize, especially if they're newer to your team, is that your team's social media is not your social media. And while your social media should always be, you know, appropriate and things like that, your team's social media needs to be even more carefully moderated for appropriateness, for content, for just the general image you're creating. You want to make sure that whoever posts does it in a style that's consistent with your team image. You don't want to have one Facebook post that's like super cutesy and fun and silly, and then a bunch that are really serious. You don't want to alternate how you post. You want to kind of pick how you want people to think about your team and go with that. You need to establish as a team how that social media person will post. If you have an officer team on your team or things like that, get them all together, talk about what your vision for your social media is, and go from there with what the person responsible for it needs to do to make it work. Another thing you may want to think about is your team's individual social media and how they like and comment on other robotics teams things and other things in general. Students who know each other through robotics can see things that other teams are liking and are commenting on. And that can have an effect on your team image too. If you have someone who's consistently sharing posts that just don't reflect overall the things you want your team to be thought of in terms of. So this is definitely not a necessity, but you might want to establish boundaries for individuals on your team if it becomes necessary. The last thing is, we talked about this some on Facebook. Once you're an admin, when you click the like button, sometimes it likes it as you, and sometimes it likes it as the page you are an admin of. So like, I know that sometimes I'll go to like a friend's new profile picture, and I'll like it, and it'll pop up as Frc George Robotics. And that's obviously not what you want, because you like things that you don't necessarily want your robotics team to be known for liking. But when you like them, they can pop up on other people's feeds as Frc George Robotics liked this. So because of that, whoever's your admin, you need to just make sure that they're really careful about how they like posts and make sure that they're always checking to make sure that it's them who's liking and not the page. That's just kind of a thing that we've had weird likes by Peachtree Ridge Robotics before, and so it's something we've become aware of. Yeah, basically the idea with this is just be smart, don't be inconsistent, and don't be unreflective of how you want your team to be perceived by others.
So, like I said, social media is really nice because you get to work with several other teams at the same time, and you get to associate with a lot of other people in the state, whether they're like all the way in Albany or like North Georgia and Gainesville. So it's really efficient in trying to get to your main goal. So you want to interact with some of the other teams, you know, like other pages, follow other pages, tweet at other pages. You can message people on different social media and see what they're doing. So I know that a big thing for several of the Georgia teams is kind of talking about who you're in an alliance with. So you can kind of tweet at teams or like tag teams in your Twitter talking about what they're doing. There's the whole Friend Team Friday where you can kind of just talk about other teams and how they've influenced you. And you all like this. It's kind of noted, but always maintain gracious professionalism. You don't want anything negative on your Facebook or like any social media towards another team, because we really don't need that vibe going on throughout our community. So that doesn't just mean making sure that what you post is nice to other teams. That means going through your team's whatever social media and making sure that all the comments are nice. Whether it's your team or another team commenting on your post, you want to make sure that it's monitored so nothing bad is going on and there's no hate on all the teams, because we do have to work with each other and we do want to make sure that everyone is comfortable in the situation that they're in. And you also want to tag teams whether or not you're in competition or like what you're doing. So like I know we're very close with Walton, so we kind of tweet at them every now and then. Or like, I know Links will tweet at several teams kind of asking what they're doing and that type of thing. So always feel open to contacting other teams during whatever time of year. It doesn't necessarily have to be competition, and you should always feel free to kind of work with the other teams and reach out to them no matter what social media platform it is. So here's some examples. Like when we were at Worlds, there was this huge line in Starbucks for coffee, and everyone was just like trying to get their morning cup of joe. So one of the teams from like Ohio that I talked with for like 5 minutes during competition at scouting, they were kind of just like, hey, like, we know you're trying to get out of here as fast as you can. So you want to like just tell us your order and give us money, and we'll like order your coffee in our spot in line, which like we skipped a 45-minute line, and it was so helpful. So we kind of just messaged them and we were like, thanks, Kate, for helping us with our coffee. Like that, if you know our team, we don't function without coffee, so that's part of the reason we were working that day. And then also Links with their competition post. I guess we just really like this post because we used it a couple of times, but like, you know, working with other teams and mentioning how they've helped you and supported you, and just at competition, how you can interact with others.
Alright, so going back to team image a little bit more, we just wanted to really emphasize the idea of what do these pictures say to the public. We've had to reevaluate our Facebook a little bit because we have a lot of silly pictures on there from competition. But we also have some more professional pictures. And that doesn't always match up with our website, but that's a decision that we made, that our Facebook kind of portrays who we are as a team. We like to have fun, but we're also professional at the same time. Our website is a little bit more professional looking. It portrays the image that we want our sponsors to see. So definitely when you're establishing your social media, sit down as a team, figure out how you want to be thought of. You also want to control your audience, which if you look at Fernbank links, really fun to hang out with if you've ever hung out with them at competition. But they're also very serious and professional, and they know what they're doing with their robot. So they did a really awesome job of controlling their audience. They have their Frc Links page, which is very well maintained. It's very professional pictures of them at their outreach events. It's well put together, and it portrays an image of, we know what we're doing with our robot. We have our lives together, and they do, and that's awesome. But they also have Linkstas, and that's a lot of memes, which is also a very much a facet of who they are as a team. That's definitely more of an audience of other FRC teams who are going to understand what's being posted on that page. For example, Andrew Morris, kind of just someone who's known in Georgia First. If someone from the community looked at that page, they'd probably be really confused. So shout out to Links for controlling their audience, being very mindful of their image as a team, and establishing social media which reflects who they are and how they want to be perceived. So on that note, your literal team image, your profile picture, we recommend making your team logo your profile picture because when people from your community are scrolling through, that's what they see. If your team, like many Georgia teams, does a lot of different platforms, it's good to have something that represents your whole team rather than just your FRC team. I know our Vex people will be really sad and feel really not represented if our profile picture was a picture of our FRC team. They'd be kind of like, hey, we're a part of the team too. So we try and have something that's inclusive, and that's something that's not going to change very often. That way, when people are scrolling through year after year, they recognize a post from Peachtree Ridge Robotics because they see our logo, they see our lion, and they know, hey, that's Peachtree Ridge Robotics. It's not a different robot every time that they're scrolling through, and they're like, hey, wait, another robot? Wait, which robotics team is that? I can't see the number. What? So you want to avoid confusion as much as possible, so that's why we use our logo. Your cover photo, though, is a good time to expose your entire team. We do that in our cover photo because it's a larger space. We've got a really big team now. So we need all the space that we can get. The cover photo is great for that. This is our team picture from Albany. It's a good time to show off maybe where you won something, all your team in the medals, everyone's happy. It's a good time. And you also can sneak your FRC robot in there if sponsors are looking at that. If you have people from your community looking at that, that's the first thing that they see. When they go to your page, they see, hey, this is the team. These are the kids that I'm supporting. When we're in robotics, we learn how to build robots, but we are not robots. And I think that's an important message to get across to your sponsors, is that we're doing more than just building robots, we're building people. So if you have your people prominently featured on your Facebook page, that's a message that's going to get across. Save the robot pictures for posts from competitions, put them elsewhere, but don't put them at the top. So sustainability of your Facebook and your Instagram and your Twitter. Passwords are super important. You don't really give your passwords to your social media, it's like your friends and stuff for your personal accounts, so you really shouldn't do that on your robotics team. I know it feels like a family and that you can trust everyone, but be very careful with that, because if someone on your team has a bad day or they don't get what they want, and they have access to your social media, or they can guess your password, if you have a password that your team uses for every single thing, and it's a fairly notable password that everyone on your team knows, and they're having a really bad day, it's very easy for them to go on there and post something that they probably shouldn't post, and that can cause some problems. So make sure that you change your passwords, you vary your passwords, so the same password is not used for your Twitter and your Facebook and your Instagram, especially if you only want certain people posting on a certain platform. For example, if you have some freshmen that you're trying to train how to use social media, but you want them to focus only on one, you can prevent them from posting on your other social medias by saying, here's our Twitter password. You're in charge of the Twitter. Don't worry about the Facebook. Don't worry about the Instagram. And they won't have that temptation because they won't be able to access it. You want to make sure that you change your passwords year to year, because as you have people graduate, you don't really need them to have your passwords to your social media. So change it when people graduate, after important people move out, change them. But you also, in the same breath, want to make sure that you're sharing them with the right people. If there's someone who's in charge of your social media and they're very, very busy, you may want to make sure that someone else has that password in case they can't be reached and you really need to post on Twitter like right now because you're at the coolest event or you just saw like cheesy puffs or something like that. Cheesy poops, sorry. If you see cheesy poops and like, oh my gosh, cheesy poop spotting, and you need to tweet about it like right then and there, you want to make sure that the people who need access to the pages have them. So circling back around to admin and editing and all of that on Facebook and all that confusing nonsense, your admins are people who can control who edits the page. Your editors are the people who actually have the power to like go in and do stuff, but they can't control who does the stuff. Admins have a few like more obscure powers that they can use on Facebook, but it's not all that significant. So if you want to pretty much have the people who are most important to your social media, and usually seniors or people who are in positions of leadership as your admin on your page, so they can control who has posting privileges. And then your editors are generally going to be your people who are the support system for your social media or are younger on the team. But with that, when you have people graduate and they're admins, you need to make sure that they're replaced. That once we graduate, Poojan, who is our current social media person and does most of our posts, will probably be moved up to admin because both of our admins are seniors. So we don't want to have Noir on there in charge of who can post for forever and ever and ever, because that's just really not a good plan, guys. So make sure you're keeping that fresh and updated.
All right, so the last thing we want to talk about isn't directly related to how you should post as a team, but it's something we thought would be valuable to point out as students and people who are involved with Georgia First. So you can follow these things on your personal social media or interact with them as a team. The first one is PCH Q&A. It's a website and a Facebook page, and it's a couple alumni, I think, from Georgia teams who are trying to get information out in a concise and well-said way to everybody in Georgia at the same time. And so far they've done a really great job of it. Before Grits, there was an awesome post just kind of summarizing everything. So that's a page to definitely go like, just to get some general information about what's going on in Georgia. Another page is the Frc George Alliance. It's a Facebook group that was created, again, by some alumni. What they're trying to do is get at least one person from every team in Georgia involved with the page so that teams can post as they're doing cool things and get other teams from Georgia involved with those too. Two other pages to like are Georgia First and US First, just for kind of general FRC information about everything that's going on. And then, of course, we think you should follow us. So our Twitter and Instagram is @PRHS Robotics, and our Facebook is Peachtree Ridge Robotics. So if you have any of those platforms, we'd really like that. All right, and so up there are our emails, so feel free to reach out to us, and I think we'll open it up for questions if anybody has any.
iHot Robotics says hi.
We say hi back to iHot. They're mentors in the room, actually. Any questions from anybody else?
So there's a software application called Hootsuite. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it sort of aggregates all your social media management into one platform. Have you thought about doing anything like that?
We haven't, and that's because typically we post on our different platforms in different ways. So we might kind of take the content for a Twitter posted competition and put that same content in a Facebook post, but make it more wordy and have it include more information and maybe a picture. So we haven't done anything like that, but if that's what would work for your team and how you choose to use your social media, absolutely do it, because having one person keep up with multiple platforms can be a lot. Anything else?
We use it. It's worth it. It makes things a lot easier, a lot faster.
Yeah.
It's all, otherwise it's all too much to keep track of. Anything that we do gets pushed further out. Once you started with Facebook, it just keeps moving out through Twitter and off of there. Instagram, not yet, but it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
We're sort of, because of that though, using Hootsuite, you really have to think Twitter when you start at Facebook. So all of the things that you're talking about using Facebook for journaling, if you're gonna use Hootsuite, no.
Right.
Keep it under 140 characters at Facebook. Consider your Facebook content and how it's gonna look on Twitter. Use Hootsuite, push it all out, but it has its pluses. It's just a lot faster to pull that off during competition.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. For efficiency, it's great. Yeah, that.
But you do have to get yourself used to 20 steps ahead.
Mhm.
And anybody else that you teach on your team, 20 steps ahead.
Right. It is a whole new platform to learn to deal with outside of just the social media. Yeah, thank you. Anything else? All right, well then I think we will wrap it up. Again, if you need to get in touch with us for social media or just Team 1261 in general, our contact information is up there. Feel free to take a picture. Thank you guys for watching. And
Is the feed over with?
It's not quite yet.
Still on.
Yeah. Thanks so much for coming, everyone. Just a reminder that next week we're off for symposium. So we'll be back at Georgia Tech over in the Klaus Advanced Computing Building. So I'll come out for that. It'll be 30 seminars, I believe, something like that. So it'll be excellent. Aside from that, if you have any further questions regarding the presentation, definitely get in touch with the Rogue Alliance, who did an excellent job today. They know what they're talking about. So use social media and contact them on it if you need to learn more.